All right, welcome everybody to our webinar today on healthcare websites that wow and win clients. So excited to see the interest in this content. Looking forward to sharing it with you. Wanted to do a brief introduction. I will remind all of you that we are recording. So if you have questions or comments, you can use the Q&A or the chat. But we're looking forward to hopefully having some dialogue with you today. As an introduction, my name is Julie Entwistle. I am an occupational therapist. For those of you that don't know me, I am in Hamilton, Ontario. From 2005 to 2019, I built and ran an occupational therapy practice. I think at our peak, we had about 55 or some odd therapists working with our team. And in the background, I did my MBA and am now working in business coaching and consulting, helping other healthcare professionals to build and grow their practices to how they want to define success for themselves and for their business. So thanks for joining us. I'll let Jenny introduce herself as well.
Hi, I am Jenny. I am also an occupational therapist, and now I am a copywriter. I come from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I've been copywriting for just about 5 years now. So it's been very fun.
Perfect. So Jenny and I met sort of through some online dialogue and just decided there was some great synergies to what we were doing. And we thought we would put our heads together and provide you with some content that hopefully really helpful for your business. So I'm going to share my screen just to show you where we're starting here today. And the format is going to be that I'll chat for the first 20 minutes or so, and then Jenny will take over from there. So if you have any questions, Jenny's going to monitor the chat and the questions and answers while I'm talking, and then we'll flip those roles. So I have a bit of a dog theme today. I have a few dogs here, and hopefully there's no Amazon deliveries or you will hear the dogs. But anyway, you'll see dog pictures today. So welcome again. So here's our agenda. I'm going to do a drawing or a model for you on the way to business success. And I'm going to chat about your website, why. Why is this a strategic tool? How can it help you in identifying and finding your ideal customer? And also helping you to understand a little bit more about your competition. And then I'll spend a little bit of time talking about metrics before I pass it over to Jenny to talk about how you're going to build this great website that's going to help you in your practice. So I'm actually going to stop sharing for a sec because I'm going to go old school on you, and I'm going to draw you a concept that I really like using in my business coaching practice, and it helps to translate some of the information we're going to give you today back to your business. So it's called The Way to Business Success, or originally called The Way to Wealth, but I don't find that all healthcare professionals are talking about wealth when they're talking about their business. A lot of them are talking about other metrics of success. I want to help more people. I want to have the freedom to work when I want and need to. I want to be able to provide the quality that aligns with my own value system. So the way to business success in a healthcare practice looks like this. And this is a drawing or a concept that I wish I had had many, many years ago. So I think it really fundamentally brings you down to some key things that you can think about in your business. It goes like this. So business success is actually made of three things. You have your customers. Let me just move that over a little bit. If I can get my chair out of the way. You have your revenue. And you have your profit. Your customers are going to be derived from the number of leads you get, that's a messy N, your conversion rate, so how you convert those leads into customers, and how you retain the people that you have in your practice. From there, your number of customers is going to be translated into revenue by multiplying your number of customers by your hourly rate and your volume. And I'll do an example of that in a second. And then from your revenue, your profit is going to be your revenue minus the costs goods sold. For in healthcare practices, those are often the costs of having someone do the work. So if it's not you, maybe it's somebody else in your practice and what you're paying them to provide those services, and your operational costs. Those are things such as your overhead if you have an office, or if you're paying for website services, if you're paying for technology or software in your business. And what I want to focus on today is the idea that your leads and your conversion. So your leads can come from multiple places. They can come from your website. They can come from a networking event you were at. Word of mouth is common in healthcare practices. But let's just say you get 5 leads. We'll start with 10. You get 10 leads in a month. And your conversion rate is 50%. So 50% of the leads you get in your business actually are converted into customers. You don't lose any customers that month. You end up with 5 customers. This is very simple. And I'm using math that I can do in my head. If your hourly rate is $100 and you're seeing your clients 4 times in that month, then these 5 new customers or clients in our case are going to generate $500 in hourly revenue, or $2,000 by the time you apply the volume of seeing them 4 times. Of course, from that, you're going to reduce your costs. But what I want to sort of drive home in this early example of the way to think about your business is if you change your leads from 10 to 20, you make some changes to your website, you make some changes to how you generate those leads in your business, you've just doubled your revenue through 10 extra leads, right? 2,000 turns into 4,000. Say you actually can also improve your conversion. So if your website is bringing you a certain type of customer or client that you're looking to work with. So if you're running a practice that has a certain clientele that you're looking to service, but you're getting calls from other types of clientele. Maybe you work in stroke rehab, but you're looking, you're getting calls from people looking for pediatric services. So if you can streamline your leads into being more specific to the type of people you're looking to work with, then your conversion is going to go up because you're talking to the type of people that you wanted to bring to your business in the first place. If your conversion goes up, then these numbers get even higher. So it's just an early example of how to think about your business, and we're going to bring it back to your website today. I hope that's helpful. I'll move that out of the way so it's not a distraction. Sorry, I'm old school. I don't know how to use a whiteboard yet. I'll learn. Okay, I'm just going to go back to my slide deck. Give me one sec. Okay. You can see that, right? So there's a summary of that drawing, much prettier, but I like the conversation that comes with me actually mapping it out. And what we're going to focus on today is how your website can translate into lead generation, conversion, and it actually can have an impact on retention as well. So let's talk about your website. Why? Yeah, it's more than an address. It's more than just a landing page. Really, why you need a website is for some of these key foundational reasons. Number one, it really needs to communicate your values. And the values and virtues that are important to you are going to speak to the audience that you're looking to attract into your business. It also needs to communicate your vision. And so you need to understand what does my vision look like for my business, and how am I going to communicate that through a website to, again, make that very visible to others online. How am I going to achieve the business that I envision, and why does my business matter? That's really got to be one of the ways you connect with people in the purpose for doing what you're doing. From our purpose, we really look to goals, and you need to think about, what do I need to do to get there? That includes your knowledge and skills. And that might also be content that you want to have on your website, specifically in the healthcare space. Our knowledge and skills get applied through the habits and the activities that we have every single day. So these are some of the foundational questions you can go through as you start building out some of the content or revising any of the content you have in your website right now. One of the important other things to think about when you're looking at your website and your business is that, one of the key measures of success in business is going to be finding your people. And that's really landing on that ideal prospect, that ideal client. And these are people that can and will buy from you. These are people that do have a genuine need for the service you provide. and that they're able to make a decision relatively quickly, perhaps, so that when you're bringing in a lead, you're having a conversation with them, they're ready to action the decision to move forward with the service that you offer. They maybe know you, or they get to know you, or feel like they get to know you from your website. There's a likability factor to what you're offering or the way that you're doing business, and you're building trust through the content that you have and their interactions with you from the early stages of them even just reaching out. They want to obviously perceive high value from what you're doing. What you offer matters to them and benefits them in some way. So much so that it outweighs the cost of the investment that they're making, because we all are very protective of our resources. And so knowing that our resources are going to something that benefits us more than where those resources could otherwise go is an important buyer decision. And obviously our ideal prospects are a source of continued business. So whether that means they meet a treatment plan and achieve those treatment outcomes, but they say great things about their experience with you to others. They circle back when they have a different problem they want to solve, or a new issue might arrive. So I have a PDF I'm going to put in the chat for you that summarizes some of the thinking that you can apply to identifying your ideal prospect. And that's going to be really important as you work towards building the content on your website. The other thing the website's really helpful for, not only your website, but the website of others, is looking at your competition. And it's interesting, we all sort of think that our clients determine our pricing, but it's actually our competition that determines our pricing. We see this with RFPs, right? People put out a request for a proposal, and it's not always the lowest bidder, but the lowest bidder determines the value of the service that may end up being applied in the application of that RSP or RFP, sorry. It's really important when you're designing your business and thinking about your business and your website is that you think about the competition and what you can learn from them. Who's doing things well that you might want to emulate? Who's doing things that you have a different spin on that you might want to capitalize on? And really understanding like what you do 90% better than your competition. And I know the word competition seems a little bit maybe aggressive in it's more of a business concept in how we talk about others that are doing the same thing. I believe in an abundance mindset. I think there's lots of work for all of us. I would consider my competition my colleagues, and I have very close relationships historically with the people in my community doing the similar type of work. But it's just a way to think about the other people that are providing the same service. And it goes back to that buyer decision of why you over them. And you really understanding quite deeply why you. And so your unique selling proposition is something that you really want to position on your website once you understand what it is. And it's also important to think about your competition as maybe things outside of the same type of service. If you're an occupational therapist providing an occupational therapy service, perhaps your competition is actually behavior therapists or kinesiologists that are doing something similar, or some sort of coach, a life coach, a health coach. So look a little bit broader than just your profession in trying to understand the landscape that you're also trying to compete in. And what about your competitors makes them offer something that other people might want, but then also, why might potential people choose them over you? And is that something you want to leverage and change in your business? And that gets communicated through your online personality. Again, I'll post a sort of a checklist of things to think about in terms of these two big concepts. The other thing I just want to touch on is the idea of metrics. I'm a huge fan of metrics. I believe that you meet what you measure. And there's a difference between results indicators and performance indicators, and these more business concepts. I like the example of a road trip. If you're going on a road trip, obviously, your indicator is I got where I wanted to go and I got there on time. But your performance indicator is, how fast did I drive? What was my gas mileage? Did I make any wrong turns? So your performance indicators are kind of your dashboard, and your results indicators are where I'm actually trying to get to. And you want to think of your website as a hub of information. And there's so many metrics you can gather. And I don't encourage you to gather so many that the information is not usable or it's onerous to actually capture in the first place. But I want you to be able to monitor and manage, like, how many visitors are coming to my site? How are they finding my site? what pages might they be clicking on and looking at? And it'll tell you how much time they're spending on those pages. If you're doing any intentional sales efforts, so maybe you're doing some Facebook ads, or you've gone out to an event and you've handed out something that has your website on it. Do you see any spike in interest from that? Did you put a great post out and all of a sudden you notice more people checking out your profile or coming to your website through one of your social channels? Because it will also tell you how they found your website. And then Jenny's going to talk a lot about that call to action as a necessary part of the website. And okay, so great, you've seen an uptick in people coming to your website. Is that actually generating leads for you? You know, are leads coming through your website, and are they engaging in your call to action? If your call to action is, you know, book a consultation with me, you know, book an appointment in my calendar, fill out my form and I'll contact you, call me now. Are people using that? And do you have that opportunity for them, whether they are interested, invested in your service, to then turn around and engage with you right away? We talked about how many leads it's generating. And so, you know, there's many others, but it's an important analysis in your business to be able to apply learning, knowing what's working, so you can do more of that. Hey, that social campaign really worked. Oh, posting here seems to be bringing increased traffic, versus what's not working. Wow, I spent a lot of time in these Facebook groups trying to message, you know, what I do, and I'm not seeing any connection between people actually coming to engage with me and those actions through that effort. So that's just a bit of background about metrics, specifically related to what your website might be able to tell you. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. Actually, I have to stop. No, I don't have to stop sharing to do that. Okay, I'll throw my thing in the chat when I have a second. But I just want to let you know, if you want to learn more, talk more about your business, happy to have a call with any of you at any time. Just reach out to me. You can do that through email. You can do that through LinkedIn. But at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Jenny to talk to you about how you're going to build this really great website. So I'm going to stop sharing. Is there any questions maybe though, Jenny, do you notice that I should answer before you get started?
I didn't see any questions come through, but as we shift things over, it's a great time for our participants. If you want to put something in the chat or in the Q&A, go ahead and do it now. And as we're shifting over the screens here.
And I'm going to share that document.
All right, Julie, there is a question. What is your email if they want to contact you?
Sure, I'll throw that in the chat as well. Thanks.
Excellent. Let's see here. All right. If someone could tell me in the chat, are you able to see my screen? Kind of that initial check. We got this set up correctly. Yay. Okay, so now we're going to switch this over to how are you going to write this website? So in this, we're going to talk about how you connect to the audience, a little bit about SEO, which is search engine optimization. We're going to talk about maybe one of the more boring topics, but my personal push, I believe it's so important, is page structure. We're going to talk about identifying your call to action and laying out your process. We're going to go a little bit into some of the main pages and what to put on those. And we're going to finish up with some of my favorite copywriting tips for bringing all these concepts to life inside your website. So here we go. To begin, I like to start with this premise. I'm a big believer that you create a website not just to look pretty. It doesn't just get posted and be out there. You got to be thinking strategically, and you're going to create a website that does some of the work of lead generation for you. It's not going to do all the work, and I am still a big believer in other forms like networking, building referrals, all those things. But at some point, you're going to run out of time, or there's going to be people out there who need you who are going to Google. We know people go to Google. Let's meet them. So to create a really great strategic website, you need two main things. You need SEO, that's that search engine optimization, so people can find you. And then after they've found you, you need the right words on your website so that it speaks to them and they know how to take the next step. So anytime I'm working on a website, I'm kind of balancing those two things to make it a strategic tool for a business. So quick introduction, once again, I am an occupational therapist. I spent 9 years working in rural health and outpatient orthopedics before pivoting over into copywriting. My focuses right now are brand messaging, so capturing the words of a brand, website copy, which we're talking about today. I mainly do that by writing the words of websites and then providing consulting, and then also just marketing resources. I'm a big believer in getting information out there. So I'm on a mission to equip occupational therapy and healthcare leaders to be found and stand out online. I'm just a big, we do great work. Let's share it with those who need it. So a peek behind my process is anytime I'm writing a website or like a bigger project, I break it into these steps. First is to gather, next is to organize, and finally it's to write. I think everybody figures you just sit down and write a website, and that's actually far from the truth. The biggest work is actually in steps 1 and 2. Gathering, we'll go over it in a minute, but it's really what Julie talked about, of coming up with all those ideas and figuring out what it is that you want to say, and then organizing those ideas into a structure. And so each page, what goes on there, which pages you want, that's the strategic vision. And once you've done all that work, then you finally get to step 3. And the more you work on this, you'll find the gather stage gets faster and faster because you've done some of the groundwork and you can get to the writing faster. Okay, so gathering the right information. This is what Julie was really talking about in her first step. And I find what happens is I'm going to ask my clients for all these things, and some people can pass them off real quick, and other people we have to slow down and do a little bit more time to dig it out. And really my role is to take what clients give me and then find the words to bring it forth onto a website. How do we say it so that it matters? So I'm going to go over these quickly. You're going to have a core message, which is your key beliefs, maybe your story, the you factor, your values, all of those. It's my goal to bring forth strategically onto a website. And you also have to have that really great understanding of your ideal client. It's not just a worksheet that you do in business coaching and put it away. It comes alive on your website. So you need to know goals and desires. You need to know how they describe their problems and then insert that onto your website. And you also have to know how your ideal client self-identifies and then be able to call them out. And then before you ever write your website, you also need to know the offer that you're putting out there and sharing. And so that includes the promise. So what is the outcome you're going to give them? The process to work with you. We're going to go over that a little bit. And really what's included. So what are they going to get? And then what price point do you put with that? Being very clear on your website, again, will help conversions and help you overall. So after you've gathered that, we got to talk about gathering up some SEO knowledge. I'm a big believer in this as an early part in the process because the final website we want to be found in Google. Let's think about it early, and that way you end up with that outcome that you want. So SEO is search engine optimization. And what you need to know is that there is an algorithm inside of Google that shows websites in responses to what people type into the search box. So you're probably very familiar with this. You type something into Google and it shows you a list of websites. And so as a business owner with a website, it's your goal to think about what people are typing in and then to land up near the top of this so that people find your website. So the whole goal is to get on page 1 or 2 so that people can find you. So how do you do that? How do you get on this page 1 so that your website shows up? And it's quite a few things. This could be a whole huge course in itself, but what factors impact Google rankings or your SEO? This is kind of the quick list, the ones that I focus on. First off is a correctly set up website. I recommend that if you have a website, you use a free tool called Ubersuggest. You can put your website in there in the website review, and it will spit out what is working for your SEO? What things do you need to fix? This is what I walk people through when I do kind of website consulting, is we get this report and we talk about, okay, how are you going to improve your website? The next one, I put a star next to the ones we're going to kind of talk about today, is you influence showing up in Google with your use of keywords. So knowing what people are searching and then putting them into your website so that it gets found. Another one is using the correct formatting with headings and subheadings. We're going to go over that today. This both helps your SEO when done correctly and actually helps your website user so that they can skim through your website. Next is the size of a website. Just know that the bigger your website is and kind of the more active, the easier it is to show up on Google. So that's both the number of pages and the length, like the number of words on each page. Next is amount of traffic to your website. So if you have a good number of people visiting your website, Google is actually going to send more people your way. Think of a restaurant with a crowded parking lot, lots of cars outside. You're going to drive by and say, wow, that's a really great restaurant. Maybe I'll go check it out. It's the same thing with your website. If Google sees a lot of people are going there and hanging out, it's going to send more people your way. Next one is the age of your website. This one you can't influence as much, but just know that Google prefers older websites. You kind of get grandfathered in, and it takes a while for SEO to really take effect. So keep in mind, if you have a newer website or you make updates, it's going to take, I say, 3 to 6 months before you really see those updates hit Google and you'll see your rankings change. So people will say, hey, I posted my website a week ago and it's still not in Google. And I say, wait longer. It will come. Just make sure it's able to be indexed by Google, and it will come eventually. Another factor is link to and from other websites. So if people are linking to your website, especially established websites, that's great. Or if you're linking to other established websites, it's kind of like a personal referral in Google's eyes. And the last one's actually my favorite, is even if you're trying to do SEO, you really want quality content that people like to read. At the end of the day, it's really goal number 2 of you have to have the right words. And so when you have really good words, you're going to make it through Google updates, algorithm updates, and just have things that people want. And I do have a questions. Do platforms like Squarespace automatically do SEO for you effectively? Yes and no. So as far as platforms, I think some of the strongest are Squarespace and WordPress. They each have their pros and cons. And it does have the functions for SEO in there, and it's about making sure that they're all working and that you're doing them correctly. And so that's what I keep in mind. And when I run website audits, I find, oh, people miss to do, X, Y, and Z. And if we fill in those boxes or add some more keywords, that's when it sort of takes effect. So it only works if you do it correctly is the true answer. And we'll go over a few of those concepts in here. And if you run it through Ubersuggest, it will also point out some of the errors. And then it's about knowing how to do that. I do have a recommended word count for blogs. 500 is a minimum, I say, and really 800 is much better. And overall content, 1,000 words plus for a blog, just it shows up better. So I usually in my own blogs, although I'm a long writer, so I easily exceed 1,000 words per blog. But I would say a minimum for me would always be 800 words. All right. So with that being said, page structure is super important for any piece of content that you write. So whether that is a web page or a blog, it's really the same structure of headings and subheadings that makes a huge difference. And that's how you get to some of those longer word counts, because you're going to immediately say, oh my goodness, that's so many words. But it's by organizing that information and putting headings and subheadings that it makes it reader friendly, essentially. So think of it like a closet. If this was all jumbled up, a whole bunch of stuff, you're not going to be able to find anything, versus when it's organized, you can find what you need. And it's the same things for your readers. So you can think of your subheadings as like the shelves, and then the content is all the things that you put underneath those shelves. let's look at a little bit of how you do this. So this is the rundown of a typical page setup. So you're going to have a title at the top. Heading 1 is what it's called officially. You get one of those per page, and it's the most valuable set of real estate in your whole page. You want that to have your SEO keyword, which we're going to go over in a minute, and also capture attention and kind of hook your reader so that they'll keep reading. Then after that, you're going to have all of your subheadings. These are officially called heading 2s. And again, that I'll show you the setting, but it adds basically a computer code that helps Google know that's a subheading. And then, so you're going to think of these each as content blocks. So if you're building a blog, you're going to have topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. If it's a web page, same thing. You're going to have your topic that introduces it, and then whatever content or graphics you want underneath that. So what this looks like, this is the behind the scenes of my web page. One of my simple ones is you're going to have your subheading at the top. And when I'm working on the back end of this, and it's pretty much the same for all of the builders, you're going to be the highlight that heading at the top and make sure that it's a heading 1. So this is a drop down menu, and you just get to select what do you want it to be. And then the same thing, if I was to highlight this below, I would make this a heading 2. And then I've added that computer code, and a lot of times these builders will make it bigger so that it stands out, which helps the visuals too. And you'll also see it like this bar over here. This is sort of their quick bar, and H1 is a heading 1. They're pretty straightforward. And then any other words you'll see is just paragraph. So your regular words are paragraph. So that is kind of one of the tech dealios that really helps, like I said, both your SEO and your reader. So now you understand headings. Let's talk about keywords and key phrases. So a keyword is like the SEO, what people are typing into the Google search bar. So a lot of times people aren't just searching a word. If you think very practically, people type questions into that Google box. They type, phrases. And so you really want to start thinking about what are people typing in, and then how do I simply repeat that on a web page so that that page comes in response to what they've typed in. So I'm going to make it super simple for today. At the bare minimum, you're going to think of a phrase and kind of strategically match it to a web page that you have. Do that by thinking about what people are typing into the Google bar. And as you can see, it will give you ideas if you just begin typing. And then I usually just do one keyword per web page at a minimum. In the bigger picture, a lot goes into how you select these keywords, and you can get more than one per page, but it's easy strategically to just think of one. So an example would be, think of a core thing that you want to rank for. Occupational therapy in your town. So maybe I want to show up for pediatric therapy in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's that simple. That is what people around me who are likely to come are going to type in. You can also reverse this and think about if they have a condition that you treat, maybe that's what you want to rank for. Shoulder injury rehab in your town. Again, if you're location based, think about what are the problems that people are going to be Googling and start incorporating those into your websites or blogs. It's the same concept for both. So a little interactive moment. If you are willing, I'd love for you all to just think of a phrase that you want to show up for in Google. So you want your web page to show up for, put that in the chat, or it's another spot for questions, a little breathing break. I'd love to give you feedback on your keywords. So what is something that you'd want your website to show up for in response to? Yes, so feeding therapy. And I would say probably, Brenda, you're probably in a location. So you probably want feeding therapy in your location, or feeding coaching. Yes, senior home safety. Again, I'm not sure about your business, but think about, is that a location where you serve, or is it anywhere in the world? Because you're going to have to be a lot more intentional and think bigger if it's anywhere in the world. Occupational therapist, end of life doula. Yep. Rehabilitation social worker. Yes, OT jobs in Alberta. Nature occupational therapy. Again, you probably have a location with that one, that it's not nature occupational therapy from anywhere in the world, probably your specific location. So great job. Those are all really good keywords and key phrases. All right. So the next part, if we're going to talk a little bit. So another thing that you gather before you ever start writing your website is, what is the process to work with you? And what is your call to action? So I have clients think of this again before we ever start writing. That way I could tailor the content to those goals, because copywriting is about taking action, and your website is about getting people to take action. And this really helps them move through and actually book a call or whatever your call to action is. So as we went over, call to action is your invitation to take a next step. On a very practical sense for your website, I want you to repeat it a lot, probably more than what you are comfortable with. My rule of thumb is several times per page. I love for a call to action to be a button that they can click and to be very simple. And it's great if that button is a different color, so it stands out and it kind of meets people with, they're reading something, they're jiving with what you have to say. In that emotional moment, we're like, oh, this sounds good. You want your button to be right there as they're ready to take action. So some examples, and you can see a lot of these are super simple. This is not a place to get wordy. It's very direct. So sign up today, get the program, book an appointment, sign up for the wait list, fill out an interest form, schedule a call to learn more. And I really encourage people to narrow down to one key call to action for a website. So think really hard. Okay, if somebody visits my website, what do they do next? What do I really want them to do? And just put it throughout, sprinkle it throughout that website. So another little spot to interact in the chat. Tell me if you have a main call to action for your website currently, or and what it is, or tell me what you think you want to make it, and if you're going to go back and make it different after this. So head over to the chat, you could pop that in, and then we'll move forward. Also, another great spot if you have any other questions. Yes, I like that. Let's talk, and phone number and chat box. Book a, yep, free discovery call. Yes, book me in. Contact me portion on each page. Yes, yes, you guys got the idea. And the reason I have people do this early, again, so we're driving the whole website towards that action, and because you have to think about, as a business owner, how do you connect that to the processes in your business? So that's where sometimes working with a business coach can kind of help you bring it all together so that it flows really easy. Okay, fill out an inquiry form. That's basically what mine is too. Okay, so let's talk about creating a 3-step journey. So now that you have your call to action, another really helpful part is to create a simple 3-step journey, keeping in mind that overall, humans like simplicity and they like to know what to expect. And we want to meet people in that moment. And so if we can simplify and make it super easy for them to envision working with you, you've done them like a huge favor. And how you can do this is creating a 3-step journey. So usually step 1 is start in some way, where they're going to start, and then talk about an additional step. And then the final thing is usually like that final outcome, what they want to get out of all this. And yes, you could have additional steps in your process, and that's okay. But keeping it simple on your website really helps people move along in that journey. So I have a few examples here of how people do this kind of in the therapy world. So the first is a pediatric practice. I didn't write either of these, in full disclosure, although I write a lot of 3-step journeys. So they talk about pinpoint, practice, and progress. And if you read it, pinpoint is all about the evaluation. Practice is about their ongoing sessions and what those look like. And then they have a final goal outlined here of progress. So meeting your goals and whatever that means. So that's kind of what it's like to work with them. This other example is kind of how you get started. So they have contact us. It's really their call to action is where they start. And you can either call or fill out the form. 2 is get help. And so this is their initial assessment. And then 3 is their outcome, right? Find hope. And they talk about weekly or bi-weekly appointments. So both of these just do a great job of making working with them feel very alive and tangible, and you can kind of picture it, which is really cool. Okay, so now you've gathered up all these things. Let me quick do the question. If you offer different services. Yes, it depends. We'll get to this in a little bit, and it really depends on your businesses if you do 3-step processes. Some people will put those on each service page, and it depends a little bit on if your process is different for each service. So yeah, you can think about it. Sorry, from last topic. Can you have multiple that are looking for? So for this answer, that's why you could have, for the keywords, different, that's why you have more than one page, right? So each page can rank individually. So you're going to pick a keyword for occupational therapy that will show up when somebody does that. And then maybe you do a separate service page for coaching, and that's going to have its own keyword for that page. And then when people are typing in for that, it would show that page. So keeping in mind, each page can rank for its own keyword. And so that's why you'll see lots of pages for different things. And we'll go over that when we get to the pages section. So any tips for recruiters in my audience? That would be a more specific question that's kind of beyond what I can cover in the webinar. But if you want to talk, you can always shoot me an email. I'll provide my email at the end. Okay, so we've gathered up all that stuff, the SEO, we've gathered up some keyword potentially, we've gathered up our process, call to action, we got it all ready. Now you're going to organize your information into pages, which that's what a lot of your questions are about. So I think we're going to answer some here. There are a lot of different types of pages, but I find myself, these are the most common that I cover with clients. Homepage, the purpose of this is really the welcome mat to your entire website. It greets people, lets them know that they are in the right spot, and then gets them digging in deeper. So that's your spot to quickly introduce your services and get them to click and go to the page. And then from there, you could have a service or product page. This is a page to make sure the reader understands that specific service. And this is generally, I recommend one service per page for that SEO benefit of ranking for each page. So like, let's say it's a multidisciplinary practice. Instead of putting, doing services and all the services on one page, I recommend that people do one page for speech, one page for occupational therapy, and one page for PT or whatever they're doing. That way each page can rank separately.
Can I just say, Jenny, I think that goes back to the question, right? If you're recruiting for different things, then you want to have that landing page that speaks to what that audience is looking for. Yeah,
totally. I agree. So it's sort of dividing it off, different audiences, different services, so you can speak to each one. And then an about page, my personal favorite to write because it infuses your mission, your values, your story, which I love covering. And the big thing is, although it's about you, it's not really about you. All of copywriting is really about your customer and their problem. And your goal on this page is to talk about how you are the right fit, how your mission provides that foundation to solve that exact problems. So let's go into each page in a little bit more depth, give you some ideas on what to do. For that home page, really the top of the home page is the most valuable real estate on your whole website. I'll spend quite a bit of time getting this right. I think about it, you want that catchy headline at the top, and then maybe a sub-headline explaining what you do, and if possible, add a location descriptor. And then finally, I'm going to put a call to action at that very top. Tell them right away what I want them to do, even if they're not ready to take it. I want to at least introduce the idea. So this is an example over here of a website I did work on. So you can see kind of that catchy headline. And then more specific and clear, we have, the services they offer and their location. Here's a little bit of more of an explanation. And then you can see their beautiful call to action. It's a different color, very simple. After I've done that on the top, maybe the rest of the homepage, I'm going to kind of capture the problem, summarize each service with probably a click to each page, a brief intro, and maybe a click to the about page. And then at the very end of a homepage, that's where I'll sort of put anything else, website details. Maybe that's a blog links or other information. It depends. So that's sort of the order I go in. And then a service page. Again, each one of these can be more targeted. This is the practical info about what's included in your offer and services. And I really focus on these so that that client can picture what they are signing up for. So they can kind of picture it in their mind and envision themselves participating. This is, like we said, a great place for that process on this page, if it's specific to that project or that product. And then I also think about, who is this service or product good for, and talking about that on that page. Sometimes the subheading is it right for you? And like a list of, who's a good fit and who's not a good fit. And then I also think about any problems that your service address. For instance, the speech therapy problems that, they're going to help you with are very different than a physical therapy problems that you address. And so I'm going to put each of those on their own pages. So this is just an example of somebody who has a service page just for summer camp, and they just keep it up, and it's register today when it's open, and then it's join the wait list when it's not. So just kind of a unique service page here. If you offer different types of OT services out of one clinic, would you recommend a different page for each service? Potentially, and that's where the strategy of a website starts to come into play, that you're going to think through that. You're going to look through what content, and again, that SEO quality, like, are people Googling each of these services individually, and come up with a strategy that's going to fit kind of your budget and your business goals, and be a really great user experience. So I have done I've done practices that are entirely all OT services, but each one is its own page, especially for specialty services. So it just kind of depends on what you offer, but it can be a very effective way to build out like we said, a bigger website tends to show up better anyway. About page, like we talked about, the goal is to build that connection, know, like, trust, and expertise. It's one of my favorite pages to write, and it's research has shown that's actually like the second or third most visited page on your entire website, because people want to work with people they know, right? And so really this page is about showing the reader why you are the right fit for them. So keeping them at the center. How I like to structure these pages is describe a problem in the world that you saw and wanted to meet. It's probably the same problem that your now visitor is dealing with. After that, I like to share the mission and the values. After I've done those two things, finally, you're going to introduce yourself and your team. Sometimes people will do bios if they have a large staff on their own page. But I always keep in mind, I want to focus more on passion and personality when writing these bios versus leading with, I went to XYZ in university, because that doesn't matter as much to our clients. So kind of shifting that focus away from just education. That being said, we are healthcare professionals. We do have expertise in training. So I love to do like a bullet list of training and background after I've covered some of the more interesting stuff. That way people can skim through and say, you really do have the credentials that you say you do. So this is an example of a website I worked on, their about page. And if you read through, they talk about the problem they saw of people needing, struggling physically, emotionally, and like this bullet list go through like limited resources for kids who do great one-on-one, but struggle in groups, and decreasing opportunities for kids to move. So all of this would be things that their ideal client would say, yeah, I had the same problem. I finally met somebody who's dedicated to solving it. Okay, so those are those main pages. Now you've done all that work. How do we write this into really great copy? So I'm going to share some of my favorite copywriting tips to kind of help you out. First one is to make it easy to read so people don't get tripped up by your writing. We just, again, with marketing materials especially, we just want it to feel really simple, and people be like, yes, I get it, and move into decision-making mode versus what am I trying to say mode. You've probably lost them, especially in today's digital world where people are scanning on their phones. So how do you do this? You're gonna remove jargon, or if you have to use some terminology, make sure you explain it in simple terms, but really use the words that your clients would use. Opt towards smaller sentences, And use those headings that we talked about. So with the headings and subheadings, you're going to break it up, and that really helps your reader too. And use small paragraphs. Look on your phone and see if it extends across the screen. People are just going to skip that. So small paragraphs and bullets definitely help your reader move through what you write pretty easily. Then next one is all of copywriting. You're going to speak to someone, like one person, or it could be like, it really is a group, but that you're speaking to someone, and think about, is that really your ideal client, or are you writing more to the level of other practitioners, and start to switch that to who do you really need to talk with and what do they understand. One of the easiest switches is to use the word you often and frequently. Again, it's all about your customer and your reader. And another great tip is to call out the identity that fits your audience, even if it's just like Grand Rapids parents. Like, that's going to quickly tell a reader that they're in the right spot. So this is an example. She calls out the ideal client, so they'll know: attention, burnt out service providers and coaches. If you read that, you're either going to fall into that or you're not. And then she says, this virtual conference will give you the motivation, tools, and education you need to structure, sell, and sell your virtual VIP day. So very reader focused. And then the next one is to write like people talk, which is going to feel kind of awkward at first because we got trained to write like professionals, which is kind of different than writing marketing materials. You can do this by using phrases from conversation. And luckily, a lot of us are in conversation with our ideal client all the time. So think back to those evaluations or those intake forms. How do they describe their problems or what they want? And then take those phrases and figure out how to put them on your website. And don't be afraid to break some grammar rules. I'm officially giving you permission to, on marketing specifically, begin sentences with and, begin sentences with but, use contractions. That was like one that really shocked me when I first started, took some getting used to. So this is a great example from a hand therapy clinic. They have recover faster, cost-effective, sparkling clean. It's about as straightforward and customer-centric as you can get. And you deserve to have your life back. How many times in a session do you hear people say, well, I just want my life back? And so they put it on their website. It's genius. And again, very simple. Don't let injury, overuse, or aging hold you down. That's a conversational phrase. So I love this one. Again, I don't get credit for it, but it was a really well done website. And okay, so hang on, we're almost done here. This is my gift to you. I will put it in the chat. I'm going to hand off a copywriting checklist. This is what I usually go through before I write and then after I write. Make sure I have everything. If you're watching the replay, you can use the QR code. But I ask myself these questions before I start writing, like, who is the audience? Make sure I have that clear. What is their journey? You know, what do I want them to do next? Like, get in the right mind space, headspace to write. And then after I've written, I double check, you know, like, did that first sentence catch attention? Make sure, you know, do I need to simplify wording or sentences? Go through an edit and say, is it easy to skim? Do I need to add headings or line breaks? Make sure you have a call to action. Even it's the most important part, but it's also the most frequently missed. You know, do you need to have it more? Do you even have one? And then finally, did you use the word you? Go through and look for any places where you say like we, and see if you can switch them to you. So that is the little checklist. I will put it in the chat here. And like I said, you can do the QR code if you're watching the replay. So as we wrap up, here is my contact information, my website, and you can for sure email me there. I'm also active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I'm going to stop sharing. This would be a great time for any questions for either of us as we kind of wrap up here.
There's a question, email subscriber list different than a CTA?
That's a good question. So how I like to think of it, our websites are actually multi-purpose tools, and they can accomplish more than one goal for our businesses, thankfully. And so usually you have a primary CTA, which is the most direct route to working with you. So like that, book a call. But we're also going to recognize that a percentage, a pretty big percentage of our audience might not be ready to book right now. And so you'll have like a secondary CTA that can gather those people. And so the secondary CTA would be usually that email list subscriber. So you can do it as a pop-up, or you can sprinkle it throughout. So yeah, you have a primary and a secondary is a good way to think about it.
So call to action is the acronym there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Yeah, for anyone. There was a comment there, Jenny, that you're amazing. So I'll just.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions or thoughts on their website, or as they think about applying some of this to their websites or their business? Just give it a minute, and then if nothing further comes in, opinion about colors.
Oh, I mean, so colors and design isn't as much of a part of my role, although I visited a lot and I get opinions. I think a lot of times you have a brand color palette that you're going to kind of stick to, and just making sure it is easy to read. Like, you don't want things to blend in. We can't read them really easily. And sometimes you just want to think about like the mood of colors. Like, colors definitely have some of their associated moves. So like one time I saw with somebody that they had all their CTAs as bright red, and all I could think of was like, that's the color of stop, although it stands out. And she switched it to green, which is go, and it just felt a lot better. So I don't know, sometimes it's weird stuff like that, but I'm definitely not a designer.
Opinions about patients' emotional experiences when using health websites.
I think those are really important to keep in mind. And I think that's part of the benefit of working with a business coach or a copywriter who knows the industry, because responsible marketing is like one of my big soapboxes of like, you have to understand what you're doing, why you're doing. And that's why I'm so passionate about pages and values and mission, because that is where we really want to meet our clients, not using any of the like if stuff. And I think emotional experiences also come into play with the problems. So we don't want to like harp on problems, but we want to highlight them, thinking about it, of meeting the person where they're at. So like an understanding, like, I understand your problem, is a nice way to kind of reframe it, because yeah, we don't want to trigger anybody's negative experiences or trauma or things. It's really taking the time to be thoughtful. Hopefully
I think too, it speaks to the need for your website to be really inclusive, and how you write that language can exclude a large population of people you may be trying to reach. And so sometimes I see websites that look like they're very much written for the other health professional. Hey, I'm an OT, I do all these things, I'm using all these big medical words, but I think, would a client, come in and speak the same language? And that's fine if you're trying to attract other healthcare professionals who might be a referral source for you, because we didn't really talk about the difference between writing a website for your client who's going to actually use your service, or a referral source who's going to refer a client to you, like a physician or something, depending on where your lead channel is. So it is an important thing to reflect on. And I think reading your website from different lenses is important to do before you sort of launch the content and get it out there. Well, thanks, Paul.
nice shout out.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everyone joining us this afternoon, and you'll probably see some future correspondence from us. And if you don't want to engage in that, then you can just unsubscribe. But thanks again for your interest. And Jenny and I had fun putting this together for you. If there's any other topics of interest, you can let us know, and we can see if we can come up with something else that's gonna be really useful. So yeah, everyone should get the video recording for today. So. And thank you for all of your thank yous. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to stop the webinar and enjoy the rest of your day and your upcoming weekend. Thanks so much.